This is Harold Allman from the Lingua XDeo studios in Marshall, Texas. When you're learning a language, you need to know what your goal is. A lot of people want to learn French, they want to learn Latin, they want to learn Spanish, they want to learn Chinese. But think about what you're trying to do. You're trying to ingest the language. And what you need to think about, instead of trying to learn the language, is you want to have a goal of becoming a person who speaks the foreign language, a person who writes the foreign language, or a person that understands the foreign language. A lot of schools, formal schools with paid teachers, are going and using these books that have a lot of the native language in it, and they are learning French, they're learning German, they're learning Chinese. And you want to instead try and be a person who understands Chinese. So in order to do that, you want to get the input from the foreign language at a very low level, a level that's suitable for beginners. Now, I'm not sure how you could do that with Chinese other than using Rosetta Stone. They've got a system which uses the natural method. It uses pictures and audio so that you become a person who can understand Chinese and there's no English. That is absolutely the right idea. I think that's one of the reasons that Rosetta Stone sells as many courses as they do, and that's one of the reasons why they are successful. They're actually going to get you in on the ground floor of Chinese. Now, other languages which are based on Latin, that use the Latin character set, you can start off with those languages by using a book and by using MP3s. But I don't know how you could do that with a language like Chinese. So there are some books out there that don't use your native language, they just use the target foreign language. Those types of books are great because you're picking up the language by using the natural method, and you just pick it up from context and by example. So you learn the language in the same way that a child learns the language. And that's how I studied Latin instead of the grammar translation approach that I used to study French. And actually, I'm not even using the right term. I wanted to become a French speaker. I wanted to become a person who could understand French. Instead, I became a person who was very good at French grammar. In fact, probably good enough to pass grammar tests at the high school level in Quebec. That wasn't the right goal. The right goal would have been to try and become a person who understands French, who speaks French. Now with the Latin, because I was using a course, Lingua Latina, that had no English in it, I just picked up the Latin by reading the book and by listening to the MP3s. And it's absolutely fantastic when you pick up the words from the context as opposed to looking up the word in a vocabulary list. In fact, when I was reading that book, I think there was only one word. It wasn't actually part of the story. It was in the grammar section. I wanted to know what this grammar tense was, and it turned out to be the Latin word for subjunctive. But other than that, I never looked up a word in the dictionary. Never had a Latin to English dictionary, and I never used the online ones. And I made it through the whole book. Now, I didn't understand the last 6 to 7 chapters that well, but that can be remedied by going to the second volume, reviewing the chapters, and just pushing forward. So one of the things you should realize is that when you're learning a language, your comprehension, say if you're using a book, will lag 5 to 10 chapters behind where you're at. This means if you really want to understand chapter 1, you need to make it to at least chapter 5 in the book. If you make it to chapter 10, you're definitely going to have excellent understanding of chapter 1. So when I got to chapter 20 in my Latin book, I understood chapter 10 extremely well. Now chapter 20, I didn't understand it that well, but chapter 10, I could read chapter 10 as if it was written in English. And if you use the natural method, that's one of the great advantages, is you end up learning the language and you understand the language just like a native speaker would understand it. Now I made it to chapter 33, so I'd say I'm only really comfortable with chapter 23 and below. The chapters above chapter 23, I would need to go back and study and reread those chapters again. There's also chapters 36 and above in a second volume. That's really difficult because chapter 36 was written by the author in the 20th century. Yeah, that's correct. The chapters 36 and above were written by native Latin speakers. In other words, these people died about 2,000 years ago. So it's real Latin. It's not written by somebody who was an English speaker. So my guess is if I pushed into that second volume another 10 chapters, that I would have a great comprehension of all of the chapters in the volume 1 of Lingua Latina. So that's one of the secrets of learning a language, is to just keep on pushing up the difficulty level, but do it incrementally. If you fail, just back off and consume some of the easier content again, and then push forward a little bit again. So that wraps it up for this video. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.